Yeah, thanks very much, Ken. And my presentation is not going to be a presentation of lots and lots of data, although I will show you some examples of some research and development around the pre-competitive data sets in our state, and also some pre-competitive research and development which is designed to bring forward some new insights into mineral systems. But much of the overlay of what I want to talk about is around the strategic investments by government in research and development, which will add value to the breadth of pre-competitive data sets and the critical strategic partnerships which link to specialist research and development teams like the Deep Exploration Technology CRC program, which Richard will be talking about after me. So just to reiterate this, when Ken and Graham asked me to give this talk, that they crafted the title of this, What Role for Government in Pre-Competitive R&D. So there's two elements. It's about adding value to our wealth of, government adding value to our wealth of pre-competitive data sets through targeted research and development and research partnerships. And a key driver for states of the Northern Territory and for Geoscience Australia, and you heard Andy Barnicoat talking about the importance of bringing forward discovery. A key driver for our state is discovery. And for those of you who went to the ASEG dinner and heard our nation's eminent historian, mining historian, say the strength of the minerals industry is sustained by discovery. If you don't have discovery, you don't have mines. Now these are bleeding obvious statements that everybody understands here. But in the case of government, pre-competitive government work and the research and development around it, the investors behind that, which are the Treasury departments, have to be convinced about the critical importance of government investing in sustaining discovery. It's a profoundly important discussion within government. And we certainly need industry to participate and buy into that. So the second point is about specifically targeted pre-competitive R&D and research partnerships, and in our state's case around exploration undercover and specifically targeting the wealth commodities in our state, which are copper and uranium particularly. So geological surveys and pre-competitive data. If you don't mind, I'll just go back to talking about what is pre-competitive data. In fact, nobody's actually asked when do we stop calling it regional geological mapping and start calling it pre-competitive data. And really that answer is within the last 10 to 15 years, and it's a response to recognising the value of what this data is. Our geological surveys in Australia have been around for a long time. They've got an enviable record in delivering science. And some of our geological surveys, like South Australia and New South Wales and Victoria, have been around in various forms for almost 150 years. But it's been in the past 2 decades that there's been a really significant refocusing by geological surveys, not away from regional mapping coverages, but adding value to significantly further developing mapping coverages, specifically around improving the scale of coverages and the collection of mineral deposit, and I should say alteration system information, which is designed to support exploration success. And I think this is one of the reasons why the independent Fraser Institute has ranked Australian jurisdictions highly in terms of that category of geological databases. So the term pre-competitive data highlights the importance of the public good of the value of this information. And in my negotiations with our particular state treasury, and when you're talking with economists, this information in economic terms is often referred to as non-exclusive, non-rival public good data collected by government. In other words, it's an investment by government in information that doesn't provide specific competitive edge for individual companies, but provides a breadth across the whole industry of opportunities for companies to come in and add significant value. I'm also on the Appreciation Society for Dan Wood, and at his presentation, which was a fantastic presentation, and I have had the chance of working closely with him and his team in New South Wales. On discovery, he said the Cadia ore body was discovered through the analysis, and part of this is my words, around the mineral deposits information sheets, which were in hard copy at the time in the early 90s, published by the Geological Survey. This was a form of pre-competitive geoscience information, a very, very valuable set of information which pointed the company towards a particular style of mineral deposit. What Dan didn't say, and I can say it because I'm a geophysicist, is that the first high-resolution magnetic survey collected by government in Australia was over the Bathurst sheet. And it was a partnership between the New South Wales Geological Survey, AGSO, and also Geoterix. So effectively it was a government, a public-private partnership, pre-competitive, multi-client data set, as it were. And in fact, that data set, which was high resolution, it was 250 metre line spacing, provided the insights for Newcrest, highlighted the areas and corridors that they needed to do further high resolution helicopter magnetics, and it highlighted the corridors which ended up being the corridors for induced polarisation surveying over the Ridgeway, what became the Ridgeway deposit. In terms of deep exploration technologies, Dan also said that greater effort is required in integrating geology, geochemistry, geophysics, and geophysics is best used as an ore system vectoring tool. And I think the mindset that Dan espoused is well and truly imbued within geological surveys these days, and of course within most of our exploration companies. I'm also on the Appreciation Society for Richard Shoddy, and I think this slide's appeared a number of times. In fact, Stephen McIntosh, who opened the conference in the keynote address, used this slide, and this clearly indicates that Australia, over the period of several decades, has had closely, or discovery has been closely allied to exploration investment, which is in the red line. But in the last 5 to 10 years, or last 5 years, the rate of discovery in Australia has been falling against the significant increases in the rise for exploration. And I think part of the explanation for that is that there are higher costs, and we have moved to a higher step cost for land access issues. So government geoscience, the public policy debate, let's try and put this to bed. In the last 10 years, Australian, Canadian and other Western governments have continued to question the value of geological surveys to the resource sector and the community. And I can tell you, when I show Richard Shoddy's slide to Treasury officials from the Commonwealth or from our state, it's both the strength and it's both an opportunity and it's also a threat. The opportunity is to convince government that you've got to keep funding this pre-competitive data and targeted research and development to help companies and support companies towards exploration success. The threat is that Treasury economists say, well, look how much money we've given you, discovery rates falling, so why are we still funding geological surveys? So the challenge of all geological surveys and Geoscience Australia, and it's one of the reasons why we're working together so closely, is to continue to convince governments across Australia to continue to invest in underwriting the wealth of pre-competitive data and information on mineral systems. And in fact, the situation is the same in Canada. In, I think it was 2010, Murray Duke produced a really excellent publication on behalf of the PDAC around the critical importance of government geoscience to support exploration. And the PDAC has continued to press Canadian provinces and the federal government on the point of a more robust public effort will be needed as part of a strategy to deal with decreasing rates and increasing costs of mineral discovery. Now, I've mentioned the partnership and between the states and Geoscience Australia, and Andy Barnacote made a very specific point of it this morning. There's a very strong commitment across the states and with Geoscience Australia to focus on opening up some of our greenfields area, which are very, very high cost for exploration and high risk. And a key component of that is around provision of new pre-competitive data and targeted R&D in those areas. Now, one of the diagrams that seeks to show the relationship between government in supply, in provision of pre-competitive data, and the private sector, the exploration sector, was prepared in partnership with our friend Derek Carter, who's the chairman of Minotaur Resources in South Australia. And a key focus that explorers in our state consistently emphasise to government is that a key role for government and geological surveys is to ensure that land is maintained for access for exploration. So a key part of the opportunities and importance of our pre-competitive data is to ensure it informs government decision making around access to land and ensures that land is not closed off for exploration. Another key component and responsibility of government is the human and intellectual capital. In other words, government providing and underwriting the support for education and training and the support for R&D, particularly around exploration and processing technologies. And that's one of the cornerstones of why our government has supported has been a key supporter for the establishment of the Deep Exploration Technologies CRC, headquartered in our state. And lastly, down the left-hand side, and you can see it's a partnership with GA, with CSIRO, with DET, CRC, the availability of state-of-the-art pre-competitive geoscience, mineral systems data and targeted R&D. So private sector goes out, or obtains finance, and a key part of obtaining finance, there should be a cross line from availability of finance back to the pre-competitive geoscience, which is a key point of convincing the market that finance should be available for their project or for their new float. And then in greenfields, the quality of exploration and the quantity of exploration, there's a statistical element to this, of course, hopefully leads to discovery, and we all win from this. Andy talked about the National Mineral Exploration Strategy. I won't say any more about it other than the National Mineral Exploration Strategy across all the states is aligned to those key elements of pre-competitive geoscience, mineral systems data and targeted R&D. So, South Australia's perspective. I won't say too much about the PACE initiative. It continues to be a very, very successful government exploration initiative, which has grown beyond the exploration stage to across the value chain through to mining. And there are programs now around developing streamlined processes for assessment and approvals of mines. But PACE exploration continues to be the cornerstone of our state's investment. And I can tell you that the discovery of Carrapateena from the investment of what is a relatively modest amount of PACE government funding, has continued to broker the bona fides with our state, and for that matter a number of other states, for governments to continue to invest in these exploration initiatives. So I've got a number of examples highlighting a number of different issues around land access, exploration targeting challenges, targeted R&D, etc. So the first one is around a very challenging land access issue. I won't go into the details of the land access issue, but it relates to the Northern Flinders Ranges and issues around the Mount G proposed project by Marathon Resources. And a key element to inform government on this was to develop a really high quality mineral prospectivity study of the Flinders Ranges. And my colleague Laz Katona is in the audience here and he can answer some of the questions. But I'll show you some of the slides. So the area of the study of mineral prospectivity study on the Northern Flinders Ranges, shown on the left-hand slide, and these ranges are immediately west of the Frome Basin, which is the host for two of South Australia's uranium mines. And this region is rich in uraniferous granites and other rocks. So the map up on the slide shows the overlay of geology with digital elevation model, and you can see on the eastern side and around the north there's fairly substantial outcrop. Much of the rest is covered, and beyond the ranges we're into flat-lying basins, the Frome Basin on the east. So part of the study of the breadth of geoscience layers in our database was to look at all the linear structures and to develop a GIS linear structure map with buffers around the linear structures. Structures being the opportunity for plumbing for minerals fluids. Mapping that with all of the copper occurrences and the knowledge of individual stratigraphic units and those which had higher copper, showing the stratigraphic zones of higher copper prospectivity, and likewise for uranium. And you can see that the strongly uraniferous stratigraphic units are wrapped around the Mount Babbage inlier towards the northeast. Gold prospectivity and a combined base metals prospectivity, and you can see much of the base metal occurrences are down in the south. A combined exploration values, and finally a combined mineral prospectivity map. Now, many geological surveys are working on these indexed analysis maps around prospectivity, and the key value is not only steering and encouraging companies to go into greenfields area on high prospectivity sites, as per the example that Andy gave in Northern Territory, but it's also to ensure that government makes good decisions about land access and keeps highest prospectivity areas open for exploration. Let's move on to the next point of government adding value through research and development to our existing pre-competitive data coverages. And I think Richard Shoddy raised a question about, or you mentioned to me about the mapping of crystalline basement. And one of the latest sets of information that South Australia has produced and releasing on the web, new updated information, which is integration of drilling data, interpretation of geophysics, all the available information, petroleum data, to provide updated spot maps, etc. on depth to crystalline basement. And all of that information is just being released, and I'm sure Laz will be happy to talk to anybody later on who wants to hear about that. So there is more and more of this style of value adding by geological surveys onto the fundamental spatial data layers that are in our pre-competitive databases. Oops. I'll move on to the next example, and this example is about strategic partnering and strategic R&D to add value to and add opportunities for exploration. And South Australia has taken a very strong approach at building strategic partnerships globally with provinces in Canada, with countries in South America, with parts of China, and other specialist research institutes around the world. Uranium is one of our core value commodities, and as many of you would know, that South Australia is the host for about 40% of the world's known low-cost uranium resource. And in the last 10 years, and this is a slide for one of Richard Shoddy's presentation, in the last 10 years, a significant number of discoveries have been made in Canada, in Saskatchewan, and there's been some pretty nice discoveries made, particularly the 4 Mile discovery in South Australia as well. So there's certainly some synergies between those two provinces. And meanwhile, China is really ramping up its build on nuclear power stations, and there is China is showing a very strong need for development of access to and secure access to uranium resources. So putting that together, South Australia has initiated a strong 3-way partnership with the China National Nuclear Corporation, particularly specifically the Beijing Research Institute in Uranium Geoscience, which is a very large institute, and also the government agency in Saskatchewan, which has a wealth of knowledge around unconformity-related uranium mineral systems. So last year we signed a 3-way research and development partnership on all aspects of uranium geoscience. And I should say those steps are the entrance steps to the administration building of one of China's uranium mines. That just goes to show how China builds their mines. So let's move on to the specific cross-linkage between South Australia and Saskatchewan. As many of you know, the key uranium mineral systems are unconformity-related mineral systems in the Athabasca Basin. And in our early discussions with our colleagues in Saskatchewan, it became clear that South Australia has expertise in 3D modelling and 3D GIS, and we have IOCG uranium deposits, and we have sandstone-hosted deposits, and we haven't as yet discovered, but we believe we have, unconformity-related uranium deposits. Saskatchewan has a wealth of knowledge around sequence stratigraphy of the Athabasca Basin, and a wealth of knowledge around unconformity-related deposits. So putting those two together, we decided we would work with Saskatchewan and do a research project to develop a 3D model from all the data sets of the Athabasca Basin. And in return, Saskatchewan has spent a fair amount of time in South Australia to go through our core library and look at the sequence stratigraphy of rocks in the CARIEWERLOO Basin. So the work in progress that we're proceeding with is continuing partnership across the Pacific in developing 3D modelling, pre-competitive 3D model of the Athabasca Basin, which is being made public, and our state's also been releasing information around the CARIEWERLOO Basin and the potential for unconformity-related uranium projects in our state. And none of this work has been done before this partnership, so it's clearly getting the right people in the room to think up the directions for opportunities for a new mineral system. And the final example is around building strategic partnerships to deal with a very significant land access issue in South Australia and open up opportunities for new ASEG discovery. And the area I'm talking about is the Woomera Prohibited Area, which covers about 125,000 square kilometres and constitutes about 13% of our state. This is the largest open range defence testing ground in the world, and so therefore it's of high value to Australia's defence industries and Defence Department, but also our key partners, the US and the British. And it also covers 30% of South Australia's richest mineral domain, the Gawler Craton. And I realised, Andy, I should have shown some of the GA top quality prospectivity maps that our state worked with GA on, which were quite fundamental in delivering the outcome of the Hawke Review, which directed government to ensure coexistence of exploration with defence purposes. So what we're currently doing at the moment is, and that's not a Photoshop on the left there, it's a real photo. What we're currently doing is we're undertaking we're collecting 30,000 gravity stations, and DISAT's doing that on behalf of our state over the most prospective area within the Woomera Prohibited Area for IOCGs. And that information will be integrated as part of a new prospectivity model and target generation model in the coming 6 months. And Andy also referred to the partnership between GA and South Australia, the R&D partnership on a new seismic survey, which will extend, in fact it extends a bit further than that, I think. It extends from Western Australia right across just beneath the Woomera Prohibited Area, and it'll add significant understanding and value to the crustal blocks in that region. And our state will be following that up with what we're calling mineral systems drilling, and that'll be a partnership with CRC DET. So I think one final slide, and I said to Richard Hillis that we could have given a whole talk on the research and development that's going on within the CRC DET and with our agency around the identification of the alteration footprint around IOCGs. And the one IOCG that we're studying carefully at the moment using hyperspectral logging of existing holes is the Emmy Bluff deposit. And the outcome of the research which has been released in the last year is showing that the alteration footprint is as you might think, much, much bigger than the gravity anomaly or the potential field anomalies, which are the primary target for exploration. So in wrapping up, a priority for Australia, and certainly a priority for our state, is to continue with this sort of data and targeted research to address the falling rate of discovery. Our geological surveys across Australia are collaborating better than I ever remember, and in fact I think that collaboration is being seen as a great model for the Canadian provincial geological surveys. And our focus in our state is to directly influence, both through pre-competitive data, research and development and targeted investment in drilling, to bring forward new discoveries. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Any questions? Mike.
Ted, thanks very much for South Australia's leadership and your leadership in supporting investment in the resource sector. I would like to ask, though, about the returns all governments are active participants in the resource sector through recoveries of royalties and GSTs derived from mineral investment. So I'm wondering how much royalties have actually returned to South Australia with projects like Olympic Dam and other major ones, and how much can be projected with the new IOCGs and the new mineral sands projects. And is that something you talk to government bureaucrats about and say, this is what you're getting back from this pre-competitive data investment?
I won't talk too long about this, but yes, it's one of the key arguments that the Minerals Council of Australia and AMEC and other industry advocacy bodies constantly put to government. Our argument in government is has been for some time that government should be, and the economic term is hypothecating. They should be hypothecating, which means we want a slice of it, hypothecating part of royalties back into underwrite the continuing investment in pre-competitive geoscience and the maintenance and the growth of geological surveys. In our state's case, the minerals royalties are still very small. They're about 120 million per year, and they've grown from about 80 million. So they're tiny compared to Western Australia and New South Wales and Queensland. Both of those states are mainly coal royalties. But the argument is starting to win home. So while Treasury won't agree to giving us an ongoing fixed amount, and the last round of negotiations in our state, I personally committed to increasing royalties. That is not increasing the royalty rate, but increasing the amount by bringing projects forward if they committed to investing in a stream of further PACE initiatives. And that's what we've agreed to, and that's what's being delivered. But as a rule, government economists don't see royalties as a reinvestment back into the industry. They see royalties as a payment, a one-off payment for a loss of a resource or an exchange of ownership of a resource.
Ted, have you got any advice for trying to get Victoria back on track again?
Look, Des. I think I should say we've been working closely with Victoria too. In Victoria, there was a parliamentary inquiry into exploration impediments, and the document was absolutely excellent, and it recommended to government, and this is only a few months ago or 6 months ago. It recommended to government that the Victorian government needed to invest in a PACE-like program. And as a result of that, the current government has granted $19 million in the past few months to the Victorian Department specifically for investing in a PACE-type program. So I think we've done our bit to support our mates across the border, and we're certainly working collaboratively on the geoscience side of it.